The payment dates have been revealed. The eligibility requirements are clear. And if you're currently receiving Social Security retirement or SSDI benefits, you could qualify automatically. No special application required. But here's the catch. If you don't know the exact timeline, you might miss critical steps that ensure you receive every dollar you're entitled to. Let me break down everything you need to know, starting with who qualifies and when these payments hit your bank account. So let's get right into what's actually happening here, because I know you're tired of hearing promises that never materialize. The reality is that Social Security recipients and SSDI beneficiaries have been facing an unprecedented financial squeeze over the past few years, and the federal government is finally acknowledging that the standard cost of living adjustments simply haven't been enough to cover the real increases in your daily expenses. When you're paying 50% more for eggs, 70% more for heating oil, and watching your medication costs climb every single month, a 2 or 3% COLA increase doesn't even begin to address the problem you're facing at the kitchen table. This proposed relief package is structured differently than the pandemic-era stimulus payments that went out in 2020 and 2021. Those payments were designed as emergency relief for everyone, regardless of their financial situation. What we're looking at now is specifically targeted assistance for Americans who rely on Social Security retirement benefits or Social Security disability insurance. The reasoning behind this approach is actually pretty straightforward when you think about it. Seniors and disabled individuals on fixed incomes don't have the option that younger workers have to pick up extra hours, find a second job, or negotiate a raise to keep up with inflation. Your monthly benefit amount is set, and while it adjusts annually, those adjustments are always looking backward at last year's inflation, rather than helping you deal with the prices you're paying right now at the gas pump and the grocery store. Now, the $7,500 figure that's been discussed isn't just a random number pulled out of thin air. Policy analysts have been crunching the numbers on exactly how much ground Social Security recipients have lost in terms of purchasing power over the past 3 years. When you factor in the cumulative effect of inflation on essentials like food, housing, utilities, and medical care, the average Social Security household has effectively lost somewhere between $6,000 and $8,000 in real purchasing power. That's money that you should have had to maintain the same standard of living you had just a few years ago. The $7,500 payment amount represents an attempt to close that gap and restore some of the financial stability that inflation has eroded from your monthly budget. Here's where it gets interesting, and this is the part that really sets this proposal apart from previous relief efforts. The discussion in Congress involves not just one payment, but 2 separate disbursements spread across different time periods. The strategic thinking behind this 2-payment structure is that it provides both immediate relief and sustained support. The first payment would help you address the urgent financial pressures you're dealing with right now, whether that's catching up on bills that have been piling up, covering unexpected medical expenses, or simply restocking your pantry without having to choose between food and medication. The second payment, coming several months later, would provide additional stability and help you plan ahead rather than constantly playing catch-up with your finances. The timeline that's currently being discussed, and I want to emphasize that these dates are subject to change based on when and if legislation actually passes, would put the first round of payments going out potentially as early as late spring of this year. We're looking at a possible distribution window that could start in May or June for the initial $7,500 payment. The second round would then follow approximately 4 to 6 months later, which would place it somewhere in the October to December timeframe. This spacing is actually intentional because it helps spread the economic stimulus effect throughout the year, while also providing recipients with financial relief at 2 critical points when expenses tend to spike for many seniors. Now, let's talk about eligibility, because this is where you need to pay very close attention to make sure you don't miss out on money that should be coming your way. The current proposal, as it's being discussed, would automatically qualify anyone who is currently receiving Social Security retirement benefits as of the date the legislation passes. This means if you're already getting your monthly Social Security check deposited into your bank account or arriving by mail, you wouldn't need to do anything additional to receive these stimulus payments. The same automatic qualification would apply to anyone receiving Social Security disability insurance benefits. This is crucial because one of the biggest problems with previous relief programs was that millions of eligible Americans didn't receive their payments simply because they didn't know they needed to file additional paperwork or take specific actions to claim what was rightfully theirs. The IRS would be handling the distribution of these payments, just as they did with the previous stimulus rounds, and they would be using the banking information and mailing addresses that are already on file from your regular Social Security payments. This means the money would go directly to the same place your monthly benefits currently go. If you receive your Social Security through direct deposit, the stimulus payment would hit that same account. If you receive paper checks in the mail, that's how your stimulus payment would arrive as well. The beauty of this system is that it eliminates the need for you to navigate complicated application processes or worry about whether you've submitted the right forms to the right agency. However, and this is important, there are a few situations where you might need to take action to ensure you receive your full payment amount. If you've recently changed your bank account and haven't updated that information with the Social Security Administration, now would be the time to make sure they have your current banking details. If you've moved and your address on file isn't current, you'll want to contact Social Security to update that information as well. The last thing you want is for your payment to get sent to an old address or deposited into a closed bank account, creating delays and complications in getting your money. There's also discussion about income thresholds, though these are still being debated in Congress. Some versions of the proposal would provide the full $7,500 payment to anyone receiving Social Security or SSDI regardless of any other income they might have. Other versions include phase-outs for higher income recipients, similar to how the pandemic stimulus payments were structured. Under those phase-out scenarios, if you have significant additional income beyond your Social Security benefits, you might receive a reduced payment amount rather than the full $7,500. The current thinking seems to be leaning toward a threshold somewhere around $75,000 in total annual income for individuals and $150,000 for married couples filing jointly, with the payment amount gradually reducing for income above those levels and phasing out completely at higher income brackets. What makes this proposal particularly significant for SSDI recipients is that it acknowledges the unique financial challenges faced by Americans living with disabilities. If you're receiving disability benefits, you already know that your medical expenses are often substantially higher than what the average person pays, and many of those costs aren't fully covered by Medicare or other insurance. Physical therapy, specialized equipment, home modifications, and ongoing treatments can create financial burdens that far exceed what someone without disabilities would face. The recognition that SSDI recipients deserve the same level of relief as retirees represents an important shift in how policymakers are thinking about targeted assistance programs. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking right now. You've heard promises before. You've seen headlines about relief that never actually showed up in your bank account. You're skeptical, and frankly, you have every right to be. So let's talk about the real status of this legislation and what actually needs to happen for these payments to become reality, rather than just another talking point that disappears after the news cycle moves on. The proposal is currently in the committee stage in Congress, which means it's being reviewed, debated, and potentially amended before it would come up for a full vote. This is the part of the legislative process where details get hammered out, compromises get made, and the final structure of the program takes shape. The political dynamics around this proposal are actually somewhat encouraging compared to other recent legislative battles. Both parties have members who are vocally supporting relief for Social Security recipients, though they disagree on some of the details around funding mechanisms and eligibility criteria. The fact that there's bipartisan interest in helping seniors and disabled Americans deal with inflation means there's a realistic pathway for some version of this relief to actually pass, even in our current divided political environment. That said, the legislative process takes time, and nothing is guaranteed until a bill actually passes both chambers of Congress and gets signed into law. One of the key questions that still needs resolution is how these payments would be funded. Some proposals call for using general revenue from the Treasury, similar to how the pandemic stimulus payments were funded. Others suggest reallocating funds from other federal programs or finding offsets elsewhere in the budget. There's also discussion about whether these payments should be considered one-time emergency relief or whether they should trigger a reassessment of how Social Security benefits are calculated going forward to better keep pace with the real cost increases that recipients face. These funding questions are crucial because they affect not just whether the payments happen, but also whether they might lead to longer-term improvements in how Social Security supports Americans in retirement and disability. For those of you who receive Supplemental Security Income, or SSI, rather than Social Security Retirement, or SSDI, the current proposals also include provisions for you, though the details are slightly different. SSI recipients would generally qualify for the same payment amounts, but the timing might be slightly offset from the Social Security and SSDI payments due to the different administrative systems involved. If you receive both SSI and Social Security, you wouldn't receive double payments. The system would be designed to ensure you get the relief payment once through whichever program serves as your primary benefit. Let's also address the tax implications of these payments, because I know many of you are wondering whether this money would be considered taxable income. Based on how previous stimulus payments were structured, these relief payments would most likely be classified as tax credits rather than income, which means they wouldn't be subject to federal income tax and wouldn't count against you when determining eligibility for other benefits or programs. This is significant because the last thing anyone wants is to receive relief money in one hand, only to have it create tax complications or benefit reductions with the other hand. The intention behind structuring these as non-taxable payments is to ensure that every dollar goes toward helping you manage your actual expenses rather than creating new obligations. What should you be doing right now while this legislation works its way through Congress? First, and most importantly, make absolutely certain that your contact information with the Social Security Administration is current and accurate. You can do this by creating or accessing your My Social Security account online, or by calling Social Security directly if you prefer to handle it over the phone. Make sure they have your current mailing address, your current phone number, and if you use direct deposit, verify that the bank account information on file is correct and that the account is active. These simple steps can prevent enormous headaches down the line and ensure that when payments do go out, yours arrives without delays or complications. Second, be extremely wary of scams. Whenever there's news about government payments, scammers come out of the woodwork trying to take advantage of seniors. You will never receive a phone call from the IRS or Social Security asking you to verify your information to receive a stimulus payment. You will never be asked to pay a fee to receive your payment. You will never need to provide your Social Security number, bank account details, or any personal information to a caller or in response to an email to claim this money. If it happens, it's legitimate. The payment will come automatically to the same place your regular benefits go. Any communication asking you to take action to claim your stimulus payment is a scam, period. Third, stay informed through reliable sources. The Social Security Administration website and the IRS website will have official information about these payments if and when the legislation passes. Your local Social Security office can also provide accurate information, though I'd recommend checking online first since wait times on the phone can be lengthy. Be cautious about information you see on social media or forwarded emails, as these often contain outdated, inaccurate, or deliberately misleading information designed to create panic or confusion. The bottom line is this: there is real momentum behind providing substantial financial relief to Social Security and SSDI recipients. The $7,500 two-time payment structure represents serious money that could make a meaningful difference in your ability to manage your household expenses and maintain your quality of life despite the inflation that squeezed your budget over the past few years. While nothing is absolutely certain until legislation is actually signed into law, the combination of bipartisan support, clear recognition of the financial pressures facing seniors and disabled Americans, and the precedent set by previous relief programs creates a realistic possibility that these payments will actually happen.